We're reading from John chapter 4, but as Murray just said, we're actually jumping around. But we're starting with the first reading, which is from verse 5 down to verse 15. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." We're then moving to verse 27. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. But no one asked, "What do you want?" or "Why are you talking with her?" Then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" They came out of the town and made their way towards him. Then verse 39. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. "He told me everything I ever did." So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Saviour of the world."
Good morning again. I really enjoy doing sermons for two, like back-to-back congregations, because I kind of do a different one because I forget what I said the first time. But more so is I know that the congregations often judge the person preaching, and so when you're up here and you do two, you can kind of compare the two congregations and give them scores and judge them. So we'll see how well you laugh at my jokes. Can you get emotional? What kind of gifts you give me afterwards? All those kinds of things. I commented first time, I think you guys got an amazing building. I wouldn't like to have to pay to heat it, but it's an amazing building, and I love your layout here. I've seen this, tell my wife, I saw this at a church in London where they had kind of a cafe when you walked into the church and then into the main part. So yeah, you got a beautiful place. I was up here most of last week for a minister's retreat. And I was commenting that I actually didn't like Katoomba for a really long time. So I grew up in Armidale, outside Armidale, so in the bush, and we could go and see waterfalls and cliffs and amazing stuff all the time. And the best part was you wouldn't see other people. Like you could just turn up. And then when I'd come to Sydney and we'd go to the Blue Mountains, I was like, it's just packed with people. All these people everywhere. So fortunately, the last few years, a few of my friends who do some guiding up here have shown me some tracks and trails that I can go on where I don't have to see people. So, but maybe I'm a little bit introverted in that. So before, my name's Cozz. I grew up in Armidale, then ended up over in the US for 28 years. My wife Joyce here is a school teacher in Wilmot. She's also an American, but you don't have to hold that against her. She's one of the good ones. I've got 4 kids. My eldest daughter is an artist. She lives in Philly. Then a daughter who's a social worker in Mount Druitt. Our youngest daughter is a uni student at Macquarie, just finishing up her law degree. And then a son in high school. And we all moved back over here right in the middle of the COVID lockdowns, so right at the end of 2020 into 21. And my job is to work, I work part-time at the Anglican church in Mount Druitt, and then the rest of the time is running the training program, which Mark is a part of. Mark's been fantastic to have in the program. We're never quite sure. We do lots of interviews, lots of reference checks, all kinds of things for people to get in the program, but you don't really know until you get in the classroom, how someone's going to fit. And Mark's been fantastic. The rest of the class really enjoy having him as well. The only thing I'll say is that sometimes Mark is just too nice. I guess I'm not alone in thinking this. And so at first I was thinking, Mark should stop being so nice. But then we've realized that what really needs to happen is he needs to have a team around him that's also really nice so that you can share the burden and share the load of what goes on, because there's plenty to do. The woman at the well, we named our training not after her because we don't know her name, but after the concept of what happens when people's lives are changed and transformed, especially the people that we may not expect to have transformed lives and may not expect to do great things. And so we'll break down, I think, some of the amazing things that go on. But the story begins with Jesus having an everyday encounter. And sometimes I think of, we do so much around our faith in a building or in a church, but really the majority of what we do as Christians is outside of the building. This is just one small part of it. And Jesus did most of his life outside of a synagogue or outside of the temple, outside of the formal gathering places. And so in this story, we've got Jesus just every day. He's tired. He's had some busy times. He's worn out. He stops at the well. He sends his friends in to get some food, and we'll hear more about that later. But they go in, and he's just sitting there, and up comes a woman. Now, she's a Samaritan woman, and you probably know as much as I do about the Samaritans. But the Samaritans were considered to be a half-breed, not the fully Jewish group. And so they were considered to be the mongrels of society, the outcasts from the beginning. So she's got that going against her right from the start. The next thing is she's a woman. And although things may have improved, at least in that time, the women were not associating with the men, certainly not in public. They were certainly not seen in the same way. One of the things I was preaching through John a couple of years ago, and one of the things that just really struck me was the women in the stories, and particularly that the women were at the foot of the cross when Jesus died, but the men had scattered. And then the women were the first ones to get to the tomb. And then I was teaching church history, and I was just fascinated by some of the early persecutions and the martyrdom, and found that you've got to search really hard and go a long way in history before you find the first woman that was martyred, that was killed for her faith. Not because they weren't present, because we know that from the stories, not because they weren't doing impacting work, but I think because they were so unseen in those times that women, no one even thought about them. That's as far on the margins they were. They were never a threat because they were so far away. And so she's a mongrel by birth, by ethnicity, or by race, as we might classify it. She's a woman, an unseen person. And then, as we'll see later on in the passage, she was of highly questionable background. As Jesus points out, she'd been with at least 6 different men. Whether she was seen as a woman who was engaging in prostitution as well, or just bouncing from man to man, or just that she was somebody that the men couldn't stand and they got rid of her pretty quickly. Whatever it was, she had all these things going against her. And so the very idea of Jesus talking to her catches her by surprise. She's like, why would you talk to me? In fact, the position she had in society meant that if she gave anything to Jesus, if she handed him a piece of bread, if she gave him a drink of water, he would effectively become unclean. And so it was almost a scandalous thing. And Jesus at this point in his ministry. He's launching it. We're in the early part of John, so it's early part of his ministry. And he's building his reputation. He's an upcoming prophet, and he's hanging out with this woman. Why would he do that? And I think about a lot in my own life is, who do I want to be seen with, and what does that do for my reputation? Do I want to be seen with the cool kids over here, or with the down and out group over here? When I walk in a room, what am I attracted to? The power brokers that are sitting over here and hanging out, or am I attracted to the group over here that's kind of on the side? In fact, I was challenged by this. I go to a conference each year, and the night they bring back the kind of the well-to-do, the influencers, and they all get together and have a special dinner. And I was like, I wonder what would happen if the dinner was done for those who don't fit in, those who are the outcasts instead of the popular people. When my kids were younger in school, and I dropped them off at school, I'd often challenge them to say, hey, when you're sitting at lunch today, could you think about sitting with somebody that no one else wanted to sit with? And knowing that would cost them. And I look at the careers that they have now, and my eldest daughter as an artist is probably the most empathetic, embracing person I've ever seen. She just makes anybody feel amazing. My other daughter's a social worker and on a particular team for Anglican, looking at some new innovations. And then our youngest daughter, I wasn't sure which direction she'd go with law, and one day she came and said, Dad, corporate law, I can make a lot of money in corporate law. She goes, I just worked for a few years and then I could do all kinds of stuff. And then she came back recently and said, I know where I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be working with women in domestic violence, families. And she goes, sorry, I'm not going to make much money. It's like, oh, there goes our retirement plans down the tree. But who do you want to sit with, and who do you want to be with, and what does that do to your reputation? What's it do when you choose, instead of the coffee shop where everybody goes, if you go down to the pub where maybe the other side go? What's it mean when you walk into a room and who you sit with and who you talk to? And this is what Jesus did right from the beginning, was he associated with people that other people didn't want to associate with. And that's this woman's story. And he gets involved with the conversation with her and uses just the most easy thing. Let's just talk about water. As Murray said, everybody's got a story about being thirsty. Let's just begin with something so simple. And simplicity of how Jesus engaged people was to talk about everyday life, everyday thing. I'm thirsty. And sometimes I think these stories and the way we translate them can be a little bit cryptic, but it's a really simple thing. Can I get some water? Why would you ask me for water? Well, actually, I've got even better water than you. I'm sure the woman's going, well, if you've got better water than I, why did you ask me for water in the first place? But he engages her so quickly and so easily. And one of the things he was really engaging with her around, which was these various men that she'd been with, was to say, there's something inside you that's just not fulfilled. If you've ever been really thirsty and had something to drink and felt like I could just keep drinking and drinking and drinking, it's just not quenching my thirst. Or you drink something that just doesn't quench your thirst. We had a family over last night, and one of the young boys was talking about drinking chocolate milkshakes. And for some reason he says that they don't quench your thirst. I've never thought about this. He goes, I just had to keep drinking, and then I had to get other things to drink. We often try and fill our lives to quench our thirst with things that never quench our thirst. I come home from a hard day and worn out and tired, and I switch on some television, some mind-numbing television to try and fill something in me. But it just doesn't work. I chase after things. Maybe I chase after food, activities. Maybe they're really unhealthy things that people chase after. And we go after those things trying to fill this void. In this lady's case, she went from man to man trying to fill this void, or maybe the men got rid of her and then she just went to the next one, always thinking that that's what's going to fill this void inside. She's saying it's never going to work. Nothing we do ever fills that void. Worked with a lot of people who've been involved with addictions, and one of the terms that we would use around that is called chasing the ghost. It's that everybody's chasing that high that comes after the first high, but you can never get there. You go up higher, more and more drugs, but it never gets you back to that state. We once were part of some research in our community. We looked at 100 people who were using heroin and asked them the question, why do you use heroin? And not a single person said because it makes them feel good. I was struck by that. Not one person. They all talked about some hole in their heart they were trying to fill, some trauma they were trying to forget about, something negative that they'd been reaching out towards, and nothing can fill it. And so we've got Jesus here saying, look, I've got something that can actually fill this up. You'll never be thirsty again. This woman's struck. And then the story kind of pivots a bit, and the disciples come back, and they've got lunch. I think about it, imagine they went down the local takeaway. Maybe they went over to the Cattlefish, is that what it is? Which is a fascinating name, Cattlefish. I feel like I need to go over and try this thing. I've got a good review over here already. Right, so Jesus is hanging out. He's down the road quite a ways at the well. His mates have gone in. They've got him food. They've come back. We've got lunch for you. And he goes, that's okay. I've already got food. Like, I'd be pretty ticked off at that point. Like, dude, what are you doing? Now, there's quite a few things that happen in the scriptures where I'm like, if I was with Jesus, I'd be like, what are you doing to us? You tell us one thing and then we seem to go a different direction. You say this, You send us out on a boat and then you go walking across the water to us. Like, you could have just gone with a boat with us. Like, it would all be really simple. But in this case, it's like, go get some food. I come back with food and you don't want to eat it. And then he says, because there's food that I have that you don't yet know about also. And that's the food of doing God's work. Doing God's will fills you up. And I feel like I've been super blessed in that way. So I became a Christian when I was about 21. I was living with a girl, and she said we should try going to church. She wasn't a Christian, and actually, with my wife's permission, I wouldn't mind asking her the question of why back then did she think we should go to church? Because it wasn't my wife. And then we got invited to a Bible study, which I thought was a bit too much, but I went to this Bible study. And someone said you should read the Bible. And so one day I just was in my house, and I randomly opened it up, and I read the first passage, and it was, the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out more workers. And I thought God had asked me to come and work for him. And actually, so I went to the local church that I'd been to once, and I said, God's asked me to come and work for him. You can probably imagine their reactions. But I've been working in ministry since that day. And so I often feel this sense of not accomplishment, a sense of like satisfaction that I'm doing what God's asked me to do. And even if it's just the smallest piece, it's just this sense of like, I'm doing what God's asking me to do, and so there's this feeding of this. There's not this eternal hunger that goes on. And so again, Jesus is using the common things in life, the common factors of what we eat and what we drink, to make engagements with the people around him. And so we can be fed and we can have our quenched thirst through following Jesus. And I think about this, the beauty of this mission. And so then we kind of come back to this woman again. We've finished our food side, and we're coming back to the woman's story again. And what does she do? She goes into her town and she starts telling everybody about Jesus. I've met this man who's changed my life. Now, the conversation lasted just a few minutes. And already she's become an evangelist to her town. Now, we were up here last year for CMS summer school. I'm guessing that's a big deal up here. You get flooded with all these people. And I thought, how many of the mission agencies we have would have had this woman come and work for them? And then I thought about our own church. How often would we take somebody as raw as her and give her a mission and a job to go and do? And so I'm like, what is God seeing in people that we miss all the time? Sometimes I think we miss it because of someone's status in society. Sometimes I think we miss it because of education levels. Sometimes we miss it because of somebody's gender, somebody's ethnicity. Sometimes we just got this, I think, off view and thinking this is what somebody who works for God looks like. They've gone to university, they've done their ministry apprenticeship, they've gone to a seminary, now they can go and do ministry. Well, she doesn't hit any of those things. Once again, it's almost scandalous how little training she's had to be the evangelist back to her people. And she goes back, she delivers a message. Many people come to know Jesus through this. Many people's lives are transformed. Can you imagine that sense? I don't know about you, if you've seen many people come to Jesus. I mean, I've been in ministry a long time, and I've seen a lot of people come to Jesus, but not because of what I do. And I'm thinking, already she's seeing this fruit of her ministry. How amazing was that? How beautiful was that? And it was so simple. All she had to do was go and tell people, there's this guy I met, he's changing lives. You should go meet him too. It's so simple in those things. So sometimes I think we make it very complicated. We think that doing evangelism, doing ministry is a really complicated thing. You've got to go off and do all this training and do all these things. Some of those things are really good. But it can be as simple as going across the street to a cafe or down to the pub or meeting somebody at the school and just telling them the same thing. Hey, there's this thing that's changing my life. I think it could change your life too. You want to come hear about it, see it. You're Simply Christianity, is that what it is? Simply Christianity. Simple, right? Just inviting somebody to that. In our training, people often ask me, what's the main thing I'm looking for in people to train? And I say the number one thing I look for is willingness. I'm looking for somebody who's willing, and that's this lady's story, right? She's willing to go back to the town and tell people. Now, there's character. Obviously, you want people of good character, but it's the willingness. I'm not a Penrith supporter, but my wife is. She's become a Penrith supporter, Panthers. But we've got a relationship with some of the leadership in the Panthers. The chairman of the board is a really strong believer, and so we've gotten to know each other. He does some work with us. And last year we were talking about how they viewed our community, because we'd say that most people, when you hear Mount Druitt, you've got a negative opinion. That's kind of been the general. But the Penrith Panthers have a positive opinion of Mount Druitt. It's their main place that they recruit from. And I said, what do you guys see? And how do you see our community? And so we sat with their coaching team, and I was asking their head coach, what's the most important thing you do? And he said, I can teach people to run, I can teach people to tackle, but helping boys become men, that formation, are they willing to put in the hard work to get to where they've got to go? He goes, if they're willing to do that, I can make them do all kinds of things. And I thought that's kind of the same thing we're looking at, is this willingness. And that's the most beautiful thing about every time I see Mark is his willingness. He just wants to serve Jesus. He just wants to go. And so the training part becomes much easier. It's the willingness to go. Are you willing to go and tell people about Jesus? To love people in just some of the most simplistic, tangible ways. So 2 things to leave of challenges. The first is, if you're chasing things in your life that never feel like they fill you up, they never will. It's only through the Word of God that we get filled, through Christ. And when I came up for this ministers' retreat, we spent 4 days in times of prayer and just looking at the Word, and I was like, I felt really good afterwards. I felt drained coming. In fact, I told my wife on the way, when I was heading up, I was like, I just don't want to come. I'm just tired. And I felt refreshed by the end. I felt like I'd been fed. And the other thing is that just the encouragement of the simplicity of the gospel, the simplicity of making disciples, simplicity of telling people, is to just find those opportunities. And maybe to go to the places that are scandalous, the places that are not expected, the places where your reputation may be on the line. Do it wisely. But to go to those places and to be able to share the simplicity of the message of the cross, which is that somebody deeply loves you and they can fill that hole in your heart.